the substitute part.
Yeah, the paid leave, the district wants to remain at their last offer of 10 paid days, the way we have it. And they were originally at 0, they moved to 10, and they want to keep it with the conditions they originally had. Certainly looks like everywhere I go, including my office, the data is going down, thank God, for everyone. If we wait long enough, it'll probably.
In addition, the quarantine has changed too. Or the opportunities for quarantine for students are different than what they were. Looking for somebody here, just press the same button.
Yes.
We understand that the school board isn't really interested in necessarily approving sub pay for teachers when classes are split or coverage takes place. From what you've shared, it will happen less often. So it's not necessarily something that will happen very often. As it does not happen often, to show gratitude for those that have to cover for a class or that receive students, we're asking for that to be the one thing that is the holdup that we have right now. We understand the caregiver piece, the school board feels that the 10 days covers that, and we are appreciative of the school board for making sure that we negotiated mutually 10 days that we could give to staff. However, when it comes down to the sub issue, there are feelings involved with instructional staff when these types of things take place. And with the sub monies being available and already allocated in those situations, and a sub does not come, then it's one of those situations where instructional staff feel this is something that is reasonable and not necessarily taking advantage of something, because we know that we also have some folks that, in terms of their safety, as you were saying, we want to make sure that we understand that the safety part is to have the subs in place. Yes. We also know the realities of securing the subs and what happens. And we can have a pool. We had a pool of about 800 people that were in there, and we were still having problems with people being picked up. Now, thank you, Brett and HR, for going through that list more accurate of where it should be, but there still are the realities of people sign up for subs and then just are no-shows. Just the same way, like out of 10 interviews, maybe 3 people show up. So we're still experiencing the impact of that. And if it's going to be lessened by the mass hiring and by having dedicated subs, it shouldn't be happening nearly as much.
So I have two, I guess I have one question. So and I'm gonna make sure I'm understanding, you're speaking specifically when Dina, because every school does it a little differently. So you're speaking that Dina goes into ASOP, puts my code in. I don't tell my principal or anybody that I need a sub, just because that's how the system should work. I get a sub, if someone answers, but then the sub doesn't show up, therefore the principal says, now split up Dina's class, 2 go to her, 2 go to him, 2 go to, you're speaking about those instances, or are you speaking about when a teacher says, I have to leave early, my principal is gonna cover it, and they work it out with their team, and they split the class up then?
We're talking about the
I wanna make sure
instances where it is ASOP and this is lead that someone is signed in for. Someone doesn't show, now, because
Okay.
you're not there for third period or whatever, because now I'm being asked to cover your third period because your sub didn't show. That would be an instance right there. In elementary, of course, it's different because then it becomes the split fees.
I want to make sure I was understanding that if a sub wasn't called, that the teacher left the last period.
No,
Okay.
I think that issue existed pre-COVID, will probably be addressed and happen post-COVID. We're trying to minimize that impact of it happening. But it's, again, I don't know that it's a COVID MOU. And I haven't bargained anywhere, COVID MOU on COVID. Subs are an issue, guests are an issue everywhere since me and began, and so are bus drivers trying to climb. But the board is not authorizing us to accept this. I don't know of any other way of saying it. I'm not saying there's not an issue. I'm trying to be creative to solve the issue. Will it go to 0? I don't know. Nothing ever goes to 0 in a school district. But we will try to address the concern, continue to try to address the concern post-COVID.
And Leonard, I appreciate that. and I understand what you're trying to say. When you equate it to bus driver shortages and other things that are not a part of our bargaining unit, we're trying to make sure that we understand there's shortages, like across the board shortages. We get that part. It's not necessarily that in trying to advocate for this that we're saying that we don't understand the realities or the situations that the district are in. But I don't think it necessarily is an equatable piece of saying that when these situations happen, whether it's COVID related or not, and it happened before, this is something that we're planning on pushing forward as we move forward, as we continue our negotiations, because we know this is an ongoing issue. But in this particular time, it's like magnifying glasses on it, which makes it something that we have been asked to bring forward for this COVID part. So that's the realities that we're in right now, and it's not necessarily trying to put something in that's not COVID related. It's just it is COVID related, but it's
COVID
not
exacerbated.
exactly.
We understand that we have agreed to several lines of language and have not asked for any language. So we do understand there are valid concerns. There's probably 10 more valid concerns you could have brought. I imagine there's a lot on the cutting table. There's a lot of valid, it's not an invalid concern. It's a valid concern.
And I guess that's the part that
Saying no does not mean we don't care. That's not the message. I guess I'm conveying it wrong. That doesn't mean you don't care.
I get
the issue.
we're not saying that there's no caring. What we have to be able to convey is why, other than we're going to get you subs, why it's not possible. Is there a logistical thing? Is there what is the hang up other than maybe past practice or whatever it is? Is it because, and I'm not saying that this is the case, is it because sub budgets are always one of those things that even when it's not a COVID year, no one's taking Fridays off, our sub budget is depleted. You can't tell that to a staff at 50% on and off, but principals do it sometimes. And so the thing is it because of the sub budget now? Is it because when the sub budget gets done, it gets rolled over into a discretionary fund for the school? I don't know what the answer is to any of those, but what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to say, here are the concerns here from the district. This is what they're saying. Other than just a no, this board's not interested in it. It's like, we're asking, what is the hang up? How can we get past that part? Is there a way past that part? Is it something that maybe not now, but something that could be looked at if there is something internally logistically that needs to take place? To just be able to say the school board says no. I mean,
The school board is engaged in an active hiring process to try to resolve the age-old problem of subs. So we're currently doing it, we're having some success, we're going to continue with the success and try to alleviate this situation.
May I ask a question? If the hiring goes the way it looks like it's going, and we do get enough subs, wouldn't the case of having the split classes be less? It happened less often because you have more subs to pick from, right? Like when the classes be split up, so it happened less often, so that means it cost less. There'd be less instances of having to pay this, so.
Ideally.
I mean,
But
it
it's
kind of
not-
makes it more, it kind of leans towards our point, a little bit more. That it's possible, especially if you have the subs in place, it happens less often, therefore.
So. Okay, we hear you. I don't, just like you said, going forward, if this is something we're all gonna look at and hopeful, to do that now, I think this is an issue, period. We didn't just start splitting, and I hear what you're saying, we didn't parental students aren't just splitting classrooms this year or last year. This is a huge issue from your perspective and from the district's perspective, because we want to make sure that teachers are treated fairly. However, the capacity to start in order to, to hear your concerns, it cannot be rectified in determining, because all these instances and nuances are different. That's why I asked the question. So if you want to look at this in terms of whole book, in terms of how teachers are compensated potentially, but to be able to say that, and you're right, it's exacerbated, just like you said, because of COVID. But it's not that the board, is, like you said, not caring, but I guess from our perspective, from me sitting and talking with them along with Brett and Wallace and Will, it's a matter of what are we doing to help mitigate the problem of the issue? How are we working to help with the issue so that this is not a big issue? And what is it looking like at every school site? And it's done differently. So that's why I'm saying the time and during the whole book, if that's something you all want to look at, I think it needs to be done there, not in the COVID MOU.
With the COVID response, you talk about safety. And one of the safety issues that they're having when they're splitting a class is you're bringing students in from a different environment. You're not used to these children. You don't know exactly who they are, where they've been, what the circumstance. So you are putting them more at risk. It is a COVID related issue.
The whole risk thing hasn't proven out throughout many districts, if not every district. It just hasn't proven out. The kids aren't feeling teachers because it's not data bugs. They're not. It's not happening. It was a fear years ago that would be it. That was the number one fear.
You can't really say that. You can't really pinpoint where you get COVID from. So you can't say kids are not getting it to the
Well,
teachers.
I can say teachers aren't getting positive in the numbers everyone feared. They're just not.
Okay.
I mean, the fear was if one kid comes in, the assumption was that kid was positive. That was the assumption, that Johnny came from second grade, so he must be positive he's coming into this class. And it was just not. It just didn't happen like, thankfully, I say thankfully, like everyone feared 2 years ago. We were all in the unknown.
But as we look at our numbers are going down. What I don't want to do is, I mean, this is the 6th or 7th week of school, and we're still bargaining COVID MOU. School has started.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to, this is, and I understand how important this is, but we can address this in the whole book and not in the COVID MOU. But it's up, I mean, we've already been.
So I'd like to speak to that just briefly and try to do it in a way that we understand that we have vested intentions a lot of times. Okay. And we've said that we will work on things that we have not gotten to when it comes to things that we discussed, that we said we would come back in January of last year, and then we didn't come back. And that was of a primary concern at that time of compression, leapfrogging, and recognizing our veteran teachers. So the concern, and it's not saying that it's intentional, it's just saying that it's a concern,
Right.
is that we say that we're going to work on something and getting to the point where we actually have a date certain, yes, this is when we'll do it, this is when we'll have it done. That's the part that we're concerned that it's just going to be kind of kicked down the road.
Well, I can say
it's one of those things that we just need you to understand. It's not saying, again, not saying that it's intentional. It's just that when it comes to conversations, we seem to, as you said, come back around to same conversations, and what we want to do is to make sure that we have those conversations and we're more deliberate about resolving things that we said that we would
So case in point, last spring, you all asked us to address training principles on multitudes of things. We have begun that, so the statement about us saying we're gonna kick things down, we have begun this year in all earnesty, the way we said we would. Training our principals beginning in August, offering several more trainings in addition to principal meetings to make sure they are equipped with the tools and the knowledge of the contract book. So to say that we kick things down the can, we've met diligently each month in labor meetings to address concerns. I know we met last Tuesday, which was the 21st, and there's several concerns that you asked us to get back to you on. But anything that you've asked us to do, we've responded to. So I wanna make sure for the good of the order, when you ask us to do something, we do it. Kicking down the can or things being pushed down due to pandemic reasons, et cetera. Substitute teaching is an issue. It was an issue before COVID. It's an issue now that's been exacerbated. But I would like us to move on so that we can get to the whole book. We have spent 6 weeks on a COVID MOU and school has started. We are supposed to be responding or starting to work on Articles 7 and 13. And so I hear what you're saying, but I just wanna make sure that I'm clear for the good of the order that we have done and held true to whatever you've asked us to do and to deal with as a district since this summer, since those concerns have been brought forward on a consistent basis last spring, as relates to grievances, as relates to dealing one-on-one with issues that deal with evaluations, we have worked on it. And with specific individuals that have concerns. So I wanna make sure that that's duly noted. We have not purposely, since starting this year, kicked anything down. If it's financial, we have to go, as we said, to the board. We've been several times to them, and although in any ideal situation financially, we'd love to be able to do this, but that it's not doable at this point. So I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say.
So you said that it's not financially doable.
What I'm saying, go ahead, Clarence, go ahead.
We'll hold again on this COVID MOU. We have a teacher salary increase allocation information for you to share with your members about how our number broke down. So we'd like to share that with you. And then we have an MOU about a supplement for Canvas and educational tools coach. So we'd like to get those at least across the bow. And then we can sit on this for another month. It's fine by me.
Sit on it for another month? Is that what you just asked?
Well,
However you wanna sit on it, do you want to accept that one?
Pause it for today,
Pardon?
just we'll pause it for today.
I mean, we can pause it for how long, however long you want to pause it. We're ready to sign it, but if I understand, if that's a sticking point, we're stuck, we're just stuck, but let's just at least discuss teacher allocation funds so we can get some information, because people are starting to ask.
I would like to ask a question for consideration, not that you have to answer right now, but if the sub pay piece is something that is for lack of better words, not considered the COVID MOU piece and more full book, is there a way to let's consider, put something in writing that says that we will address that issue and deal with it during the full book?
You could pass any language, just like a normal bar, I can't say we'll accept the same language. But we will, again, accept all language. And it's not dead. If we propose it, it comes back to like, you don't have to impasse on that sentence. We will accept it and still have to struggle through it. And somehow find creative ways of where both parties aren't happy, but we're at least addressing, finding ways to help teachers with that issue, and principals, and students and parents.
Austin, go ahead, you wanna present the canvas?
Alright, so in front of you, you have the MOU for the Canvas. Last year, I believe it was called the Canvas Coach. Now, to be more inclusive of the needs that were identified last year at the different sites, to include those other educational tools, it is the Canvas and Educational Tools Coach. Basically, each site would have a designated individual responsible for supporting the teachers at that site with Canvas and other instructional technology needs. It's pretty self-explanatory to the point. I know at several schools last year, these individuals supported teachers. They had monthly meetings with Denise Williams to learn about the different functionalities in Canvas. So we hope to continue this this year as well, moving forward.
And I know last year, I think we did it, we were over at Lively, and I think we had 2 people per school because it was so overwhelming. And I think we used Kim's model. I think Kim, your school's model does something a little different. I think you had a teacher that was on half release. And so, but for schools that had not, or not able to do that, I think that's why we allotted for 2, but we wanted to make sure that we brought this back to you all for consideration to make sure that we're continuing that support at the school site. Okay, so that's that. And then Brett, if you want to share the teacher.
Okay, so as you guys will recall, last year, 2021, in that fiscal year, the legislature approved $50 million for the teacher salary increase allocation within the Florida Education Finance Program. The parameters of the program was that 80% was to be used to increase the minimum base salary for all full-time classroom teachers as defined in statute to $47.5 or the maximum amount achievable. The remaining 20% were to be used to provide salary increases for any full-time classroom teachers who did not receive an increase from the 80% allocation or received an increase less than 2%, as well as any other full-time instructional personnel as defined in the statute. So those parameters still exist this year, and the state has come forward and added an additional $50 million. They continued the funding from last year. They've added an additional $50 million. And so LCS has received our allocation from that new amount, the $50 million, and the new allocation is $435,774 for 2021. So as we've gone through and applied the parameters according to the number of employees that we have, and looking at the distribution, we're looking at a new minimum salary of $43,695. This is an increase of $391. That basically establishes a new floor for teachers within the district. Unfortunately, because of the way it all played out, you know, the amount of money left in the 20% allocation means that there's we'll bring everyone to the new $43,695, but it leaves an amount that is $31 to be added to everyone that is not above that, or sorry, that is above that. So if they make over $43,695, then they'll get $30. And that it's a simple matter of how. There's no real choice there in terms of what we decided to give them. That's how that was based on the allocation.
And that's just Leon County's allocation. Okay. Because I know they allocate, and I just want to make sure that was clear too.
So this is the proposal for this year.
Based on the monies that we've been allocated.
Well, I understand those monies.
Do you want me to give the financial statement, Dina?
Yeah, yeah.
just so you all know, because I saw like Kim giving me side eye and Scott, it's not like, there's no district money. I'm sure you all saw the Family Empowerment Scholarship numbers that came out. And so right now we're getting ready for FTE week. We are hoping that we meet our lower FTE, although it does not necessarily look like we're going to meet those FTE. If we do, we'll get like real close. I'm just hoping that we make it. But the big issue is the Family Empowerment Scholarship, the changes that they made to that program last year, where they brought in the Gardner Scholarship, they brought in all the wait lists from the tax credit scholarship. Our scholarships grew. Last year, we paid about $3 million. This year, they're taking $10 million from us for the scholarships. With the changes that they made at the legislative level last year, I think a big reason for the increase is the students no longer have to be our students in order to be eligible for the Family Empowerment Scholarship. So we don't have the list of these students yet, but what we were assuming is that a lot of these students were already in private schools and were eligible for the scholarship and are now basically, we are paying for their private school education with our funding. The letter that we received from the CFO, the Department of Education, said that starting with our FEFP distribution on October 8th, that they're going to start decreasing our budget by that $10 million. So that's 500 grand less in cash twice a month that we'll be receiving from them if we make our FTE, and if there's not this massive growth like what we saw in Neon across all the other counties, which I think they're going to be because they said the whole program grew by about 60,000 scholarships this year. There's a chance that we might get some funding from that new student allocation that they put out there, but those funds wouldn't even be put into our budget. We would start seeing that adjustment in February with the third run of the FEFP calculation. So right now, where I sit, I budgeted $4 million for scholarships. We are paying 10, so I'm short $6 million that I have to dig out of my budget somewhere. So there's no additional funding right now for anything. And like everyone that's sitting in here in leadership can tell you that that has been my message on everything is I have to find this other money with everything else we have going on. So
Kim, the numbers, I know last year we talked about the numbers for the FTE, that we were down like 1,200 kids. And then what are we're above.
Right now, we're hoping that we make our numbers that are less, that are still the 1,200 less.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at class sizes and I'm seeing class sizes that are ridiculously small. So we allocated tons of units out to our schools based on the FTE from last year, our projection, which was making it from last year. And then we came back with the CARES funds and we gave them additional funds for pullouts and intervention. I'm seeing really tiny classes and, you know, the numbers, while they're still being cleaned up for enrollment, some schools are less than what they had last year, less than what they had last year. So we'll see. I mean, FTE week is October 11th. So we'll see then. I know Brett had some stuff that went to the board last week where I'm thinking that'll help with the scheduling, with the teachers, with the certifications, right, getting that done so schools can finish up their schedules. But right now, like, it's, I mean, if we don't make our FTE and I have to dig out the $6 million, I mean, so that's where we sit. So right now, what Brett's offering is the money from the state. I mean, honestly, I really think, I'm sorry to get on my soapbox again, but with this Family Empowerment Scholarship, and they said it last session, I don't think it resonated. I mean, there were several members that said it. They basically created the second largest district in the state with state funds that has none of the requirements that we have. They changed what's going out, like part of that $10 million, they get teacher salary increase allocation in what's going out. They don't have the same certification requirements. They don't even have the same testing requirements, but all of that goes out with these scholarships now. So this is just, I mean, the Family Empowerment Program is a big issue, and next year I think it's going to be even bigger because they're going to stick McKay into it. This year was the last year McKay got to stay separate. Next year it's so that growing program is very concerning, because that would mean that the requirements that are on the K now, where they have to currently be our students, if once it goes into the program, those
They don't
students
have
would
to be.
not have to be our students first in order to apply either. So it just would mean that it would continue to grow along with the changes that they made to the salary, where you can be a family that makes $100,000 a year and still be eligible for these scholarships. So and there's no way to project it, because they won't give us any information, and it runs through that Step Up for Students program. So still today, all we have is a letter that we received, and we didn't receive it until after all of our statutory budgeting deadlines either. So we received a letter from DOE
Oh, that's right,
after
after
the
hours.
statutory budgeting deadlines of what they projected based on the number of applications that they had seen from Leon and the number of scholarships they had awarded. So I know, like, multiple districts across the state, I saw like all kinds of panicked emails from CFOs about how is this affecting your budget, what are you doing? And so I think right now everybody is like holding their breath for FTE week to get a better idea of where districts actually stand. But this program, I mean, the fact that they don't have to be our kids, so they wouldn't be included in our FTE to begin with, but we're paying it out is
Ridiculous.
it's an issue.
So there's two things, one being a negotiation for salaries and stuff based off of information. Then there's also the realities that we know of, you know of, public has no clue. And we have a capital that's right there. And
We're
one of
gonna
the
have a
requests
workshop
that we
on it.
had, one of the requests that we had last year, because I think there was mutual feeling that when there were individuals that were hired to be, I guess, lobbyist advocates, it was more updates than it was necessarily exactly advocating for what was necessary for the district in order to be able to fill some of these holes. And so I know that we made a request to the superintendent, to DAP, to HR, everybody, about trying to do something more, as the contract says, coordinated this session to address the issues that are taking place so that it is on the front page of the newspaper, and that our Leon, we'll call it retired teachers, and our retired teachers in the area, and retired bus drivers and support staff, the people that have the opportunity to go and advocate and speak to these things have an opportunity to do so, and that we do it shoulder to shoulder, because the issues that we're facing right now, I'm telling you, I bring this back to teachers, you're gonna get people quitting, like, just like, no, it's not worth it. I'm just letting you know it's a reality, because, and I'm not saying that it's intentional or that you
No.
didn't, I understand that part, it's just that for people to go ahead and say my increase was $31 when beginning teachers got so much last year, it's doing exactly what they intended it to do. And the thing is, there's, no matter where my head is on this, there's absolutely no way my heart is there, because I know what the membership are gonna respond to this. There's gonna be riots. I mean, so my thing is,
We understand it's, I'm dealing with this in a few districts. Just the whole lobbying thing with this legislature, I can tell you, like, an association like yours, Board of School Association, Superintendent Association, they don't have the ability to unseat the legislature. I mean,
No.
to have the funds to knock someone out. Like,
I don't even think it's not someone out.
I
think
know, I
it's-
mean, it to change the makeup of the legislature to be more friendly.
And I think, and this is where, that there are people there that make decisions that don't know the impact of the decisions that they make. That regardless of what their ideological piece is, the impact that has on students and communities, and people they know that are in public schools, or the teachers that they once had, those types of things, that given the conversation and the this is what A led to B, led to C, and this is why we're left with crap at the end. Like, we need to address this particular issue, that even, no matter where you are, there's some level of movement that can be made. And
You're
I
talking
know
about the coordinated effort.
the coordinator,
Yeah.
because I know that the superintendent, he has big heart and he advocates for that stuff. We've had this conversation. You standing alone doesn't help. You need people behind you, next to you. You need an entire community that's moving in a direction to create the change that's there. And so those are the things that, you know, those are the things that when I'm saying that.
I share your frustration. The goal is 47.5. At the end of the per diems, that's the goal. Not our goal. That's the legislative goal, is to do that and then take care of other groups. And so last year it looked promising when they gave $5,000-6,000 to reach that goal. And then this year it was 10% on top of that, roughly 10%. Some districts didn't get 10%. And that's another whole funding issue. But we share, superintendent shares, the board shares the heartburn. Because we know how hard it is to hire a teacher. It's harder to now keep a teacher. And now I think we're gonna be blessed with inflation. So everything's a problem, but we get, Kim's just telling you her financial reality that keeps her up at night. And I agree, we do need to coordinate stuff, but this is the goal of this session. 47.5.
Well, I wanna kind of also, I understand there's the legislature piece, and I know that there's also the models and stuff that are used internally. And I will tell you that from a high school perspective, whatever these low numbers are, go to a business class, there are no low numbers. There's like 40 kids in a class in certain places. Like there are some classes, just because they're not class size classes, that are hemorrhaging. And if we are dealing with those things and it's a staffing issue and all the stuff that's taking place, then I'll tell you, just like this past week, bodies in classrooms. That's reduced the class size, the bodies in the classroom. We have great supports at our school sites, right? But I'm just saying that if our goal is class size and we're trying to deal with some of those things that are in those places, not every site is created equally in what they're dealing with when it comes to that.
Okay, so there's one other update we wanted to let you know about, is virtual school. Leon County Virtual School is up. So in years past, it roughly kind of hovers around 100 or 200. Last year, everybody was home for the most part. This year, we're up to almost 900 kids in virtual school. The problem with that is, what I have been taught, is that, yeah, they're funded off of completions. So although those kids are all there, there's no funding that comes as a result of those 900, okay.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
they
have
have to pass.
complete, they have to pass in order for the funding to be allocated. So that's another, we did not anticipate virtual school going to almost 900 kids. That's another.
Want to caucus on just this campus education course issue.
Yeah, well, we'll caucus briefly about that, and then coordinate a little bit more on what we're gonna do, and I think that's the part that, when I say kick the can, it is not meant to say that no one cares, that there haven't been efforts and things that are taking place. I spoke with a retired teacher, been retired 20 years. with another teacher that was involved in this type of stuff about 15 years ago. And it's just Groundhog Day all the time. I mean, it really is. It's the same thing, different year, different day, same issues.
In most districts.
In most districts.
I could say that, I walk them all everywhere now.
And so my thing is this, somebody had mentioned this yesterday to me, and this is what I want to really kind of hope that you hear and understand. If these are the real substantive issues that are impacting our district, then they have to be the issues that are discussed in school board meetings. They have to be the issues that are a part of every DAC, every TAC, everything that we do. And that when we sometimes try to do things that we know that are the positives and make us look good for what we do, we sometimes gloss over what is really gonna create the boots on the ground and the substantive change. So we've got to, I don't care about how it looks. I wanna know what the result is. And so I'm asking the district to kind of think of, rather than, you know, I mean, they're great videos, they're all those positive things, and yes, you don't wanna be negative Nancy, glass empty kind of thing, you know? But we have to be realistic about the information we share and when we share it. That's all. I was gonna change the chair. I didn't do that.
No,
He doesn't know.
no.
But he knows it's been.
Okay, so we have some questions on the MOU, and I think the first one is just some of the language that's in it and how it differs from last year. So it has some information that talks about the coach will assist in identifying user issues and require updating internet browser versions and following protocols by identifying tier 2 support that is at the district level. Can that be explained, like, as to what that responsibility is?
Oftentimes, the Canvas issues resulted, from my understanding from Ms. Williams, people having to exit out of the internet browser, whatever it is, making sure that it is updated. And then the page will refresh and perhaps whatever they were looking for, if it was an inactive link, it would then pop up. So assuming that you may be getting to whether or not this is more like a computer tech situation, it is still focusing on the functionality of Canvas.
So as I'm at my school site and someone has an issue, then I have a responsibility next to go ahead and contact the district about the issues that are occurring on campus.
Right, the Canvas coaches are working primarily with Denise Williams.
Okay, so Denise Williams is the district level.
Yes, contact.
Yes.
That's what I'm,
Okay, let's see, yeah.
the person is
Yeah.
not going through the tech run, it's going directly.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right, exactly.
And what does encouraging Canvas user efficacy mean in terms of the district?
Efficacy is the comfort level in making sure that the teachers are familiar with the platform, how it can be used and how it will benefit instruction throughout the district.
So the part that I just need clarifying on is, what does the encouraging entail of that person? Because
You mean the support? To me,
meaning-
encouraging me, supporting them, making sure that they have access to that support person.
Okay, I'm
And
just
reaching
trying to
out.
make sure that there's the way it reads, and it makes it sound like I'm gonna do a presentation on why you should be using Canvas and this is how you, like, I'm trying to understand what the role is of the individual that would be receiving.
Making
this.
themselves available, I am your person, if you,
Right.
these are times you can reach out to me, we can set up time, just, cause it looks different at each site. Like your person was released and could really move around and kind of support.
And how does this work if the person is the lead point of contact for application purchase at a school level? What purchases are taking place? Right.
District wide, like we need this many for this school site. It would be supporting information that would go directly to Denise regarding what's needed at that site for campus support. And
The applications, meaning that would go on Canvas?
There are some extension applications such as links to our textbooks and other resources that we link directly out from Canvas to whatever those other platforms like Classroom. So the apps would be in Classroom, basically.
So as they work with folks on Canvas and something comes up as need of an application, that person would be the person.
Right, exactly.
So as a supplement, it needs to go through the supplement selection process. And I think I understand that some folks are already doing this on their campuses right now. Is it the intent that these people would just step into that role, or that there would be a process that would take place where?
So I think at the beginning here, in all fairness, I think the same people that were doing it last year kind of morphed into it this year. But we wanted to make sure that we came back to you, because I know it was rushed when we did it last year. We were like all hands on deck. It would not be my recommendation that we go back to the school and say, who's ever been working on it now, you no longer work on it, and to do it that way. It's the persons who are feeling most comfortable that she's worked with in the past. I think these people offered themselves through Denise to say they were gonna be working with her this year again, helping their school. I don't know if there's any differences. I'd have to check to see if people decided not to do it or how it was done. But I wouldn't go back to someone now who's been working on it since August 1st and say, hey, you know what, you're out. We're gonna open it up and let somebody else do it. So I would say that would be going forward, that would be an opportunity to do that. But I wouldn't take someone out of it now who's been actively doing it.
I guess how does that play into our current contract language that we have settled on how the supplement process will be handled and how distributed? That there's a concern of, and we understand the timing is part of the issue as well. But-
Meaning what, like, be specific, Kim, what did you just say?
So for example, somebody is selected as the person by the principal, that's not what the contract says. The contract says that it's open to anyone that would be interested. If they apply, then a selection process is fit.
Right.
So there may be people that would be interested that are not able to receive it because they're not seen.
That's right, I mean, like I said, y'all can, at this point, we were just trying to make sure those people again that had moved into it, in fact, I think the schools were trying to submit the 2 names that did it last year. And what we
We understand that you're trying to make sure that they get it.
but I just,
But the problem is that it says supplement, it has to go through the process. And what you're asking us to do is break our own contract language, and we can't agree to that.
Just like a lot of this code stuff breaks our contract language. We're trying to get people who are doing extra stuff right now.
Yeah,
yeah,
That's our son.
yeah,
I mean, it's,
I just wanna make sure, we wanted to make sure those people who did it last year did get the money, we signed off on it on some sort of. And I wanted to make sure we came back because that, we know that there's still some adult supports that need to be taken place, for teachers on campuses with campus. So you all can, if you all wanna counter it with something, that's fine,
Is it safe to say, I guess, based off of the monies and number of sites, that this is somewhere around $54,000 ish allocated?
It's part of the supplement budget that I understand.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
There's nothing additional, yeah, this is coming out.
Separate for this.
Yeah.
So. So what supplements are not being given, that means that there's room for this additional supplement?
We'll have to analyze our entire supplement
Yeah.
process and
Yeah.
then we'll get back. We're just trying to get these hardworking folks
That's fine, yeah.
who are actually doing it. So yeah, we'll do that. Well, everyone's hardworking, sorry.
That's fine, what you can do is I think I have the questions. So I'll go back and then I'll offer the answers, and if you all wanna tweak some of the language, that's fine. And then get back to us, and I can respond to some of the questions that she asked.
And in that response, if you could provide what was budgeted for supplements last year and what was spent, so that if there's a difference there, maybe, I just trying to understand if we put monies in for supplements and they're for positions that are supposed to be filled at the school sites, then what positions are not being filled, because then that means that.
But that differs by school site.
Yeah.
Like, that's all at the discretion of the school site. So you want them to go back and school by school tell you who did what?
No, and what monies were spent, that's what he's trying to figure out, because I think what you're thinking is, because this is part of the supplement, then that means, like, let's just say 3 academic coaches won't be paid this year because the supplement's being offered, because of the way we're funding it. Last year, Kim allocated out of us chairs, and so we had to reallocate the monies that go in there, but I can request, I can't tell you I can have the information by tomorrow, and I know you weren't asking that, but it would be site by site, like what positions are you not filling or have not offered, or whatever the case may be, but it would be funded, it would come through that concept. So there are people who are doing the work, and maybe there are some schools who've chosen not to have somebody. I think Denise has a representative from each school that she feels comfortable working with.
And,
So-
and just to
Sure.
clarify, I guess the reason for the question is because if monies are allocated for instructional staff, and these are opportunities for people, given that we're talking about monies where people are just trying to get sub money and other things to kind of, be recognized for the work that they do, and there's opportunities for folks, and there are monies that are left at the end that have been allocated. Those monies were for the instructional staff, and if there's a reason that they're not receiving because maybe we don't have, I don't know, someone that does Special Olympics set aside or doesn't do whatever those things are, I think it's, at least as we move into full book, we need to get a picture of what we're budgeting, what's in the contract, the supplements, and how they're utilized in school sites, so that we can make sure that we're accurately addressing the jobs that they do. And if there are funds, that we're offering those as possible positions for those people.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
No, just to understand, I think it was said that tomorrow was canceled.
Yes.
And then we're gonna come back on Monday.
Yeah, Monday, 6
Right.
Okay. All right. 9:55.
I know you do.
Well,
It's
anything others, they were saying that down, I can't remember the other. I think there's lots of other options for like things, not that don't have the issues with the surface.